If you're a type A woman, there's a specific frustration you probably live with. You're doing a lot, you're working hard, things are moving, and yet you constantly feel behind. Not occasionally behind, not during busy seasons, just behind. Like no matter how productive you are, the gap never closes. And the disconnect messes with your confidence because on paper, you should feel accomplished.
And what makes it worse is that most productivity advice assumes that if you feel behind, you must be inefficient, that you're disorganized, distracted, or not managing your time well. But for type A women, that explanation doesn't fit. You're not lazy, you're not unfocused, you're usually the person holding everything together. So today we want to talk about why that always behind feeling shows up, even when you're productive, and why it's not a work ethic problem.
For most type A women, behind doesn't mean you didn't do enough. It means there's a constant awareness of what hasn't been handled yet. Your brain is tracking future responsibilities early. You're mentally carrying tasks before they're due, decisions before they're required, and problems before they exist. So even when you finish something, there's no relief because your mind has already moved on to what's next.
That's an important distinction. Feeling behind isn't about output. It's about cognitive load. You're holding open loops, unfinished decisions, unresolved expectations, and invisible responsibilities that don't show up on a to-do list. And because those things don't have a clear finish line, they create a persistent sense of lag. You're never fully caught up because your brain is working ahead of reality.
A huge reason type A women feel behind is invisible work. Planning, anticipating, coordinating, remembering, following up, managing relationships. These tasks take time and mental energy, but rarely get acknowledged as real work. There's no checkbox for thinking something through or making sure nothing falls apart later.
And invisible work is never done. You can't complete anticipation. You can't finish responsibility. So when your productivity is measured only by visible output, it feels like you're failing, even when you're preventing problems, keeping things running, and absorbing friction for everyone else. That disconnect creates chronic dissatisfaction because your effort doesn't translate into a feeling of progress.
This feeling shows up differently depending on your type A pattern. Hustlers tend to respond to feeling behind by doing more. They say yes faster, take on extra responsibilities, and increase their pace, thinking momentum will close the gap. But more commitments actually extend the gap because capacity doesn't increase at the same rate.
Overplanners experience behind as a sense of incompleteness. They carry unfinished decisions and half-formed plans in their heads, which makes everything feel pending. Even productive days don't bring relief because nothing ever feels finalized. The work isn't late, but it doesn't feel done either.
Avoiders often feel behind before they even start. Tasks feel heavy because expectations are unclear or emotionally loaded. So they delay, not because they don't care, but because starting feels so overwhelming. That delay then reinforces the belief that they're behind, which makes the task feel even heavier.
Here's the trap. When you already feel behind, your instinct is to speed up. But speed without clarity amplifies the problem. Hustlers accumulate more commitments, overplanners add more structure, and avoiders add more pressure. None of that resolves the underlying issue, which is that too much counts in your head.
The problem isn't that you're moving too slowly, it's that your definition of progress is too broad. When everything matters, nothing ever feels complete. Productivity stops creating relief because effort isn't reducing the mental inventory you're carrying.
The shift for type A women isn't catching up. It's narrowing what counts. Progress isn't about doing everything, it's about deciding what actually deserves your energy and attention. Closure matters more than volume. Finishing fewer things that actually matter brings more relief than touching everything lightly.
When you redefine progress, the emotional experience of productivity changes. You stop measuring success by how busy you are and start measuring it by how much cognitive space you've reclaimed. That's when the behind feeling finally starts to fade. Not because you did more, but because you carried less.
If you constantly feel behind, despite being productive, it's not because you're failing. It's because you're counting too much that no one ever taught you how to release.
You're not behind. You're overloaded with responsibility that hasn't been filtered. Once you understand how your type A pattern interacts with that load, the solution becomes obvious.
And that's what we'll start breaking down next: how to decide what actually counts and how to let the rest go without guilt.